the next part that I want to educate you guys on is also a little bit about fixed RFID readers. It doesn't matter from what manufacturer it is. It's all the same. For the most part, there's the RFID reader that emits the power, and there's the RFID cable that gets to the gets the signal to the antenna. The antenna emits, and they read back, and so on and so forth. But there are certain things to keep in mind. At the exit points and choke points, typically we use an RFID reader and an RFID antenna, dedicated RFID reader antenna. And what is the difference between an RFID reader antenna that has one antenna versus an RFID reader that has 3 antennas, or 6, or 8, or 32? The difference is this. A dedicated reader antenna with one antenna can read non-stop from that single antenna. So if somebody's passing through a choke point and going out, you don't want to stop reading even for a split second. If that somebody goes out, that antenna with one reader, one antenna, will read if something goes out 100%, as long as it's not being circumvented and it's obviously the right size and the antenna's at the right height, granted. Nevertheless, on the other RFID readers, if you're what's called multiplexing, you're attaching more antennas to one RFID reader. The way RFID technology currently is with these fixed readers, none of them out there typically allow you to read from one antenna at a time. So they take turns. Antenna 1 will read for half a second or a second, antenna 2, antenna 3. So there's always a second or a split second or more that one antenna may not be reading. So those are not ideal for choke points, such as exit points, or when you're trying to detect items moving from one zone to the other. You always want to use a reader with a dedicated antenna on those sensitive parts because you don't want to miss those. For the insides, where you just want to kind of light up, okay, what's on this part of the floor plan now, what's here, it's okay. They can take turns and it's not as sensitive. The reason you may want to get one reader with more antennas is because you save money. And that's the whole reason why manufacturers started allowing you to attach more antennas to these readers, to kind of allow you to lower your hardware cost of, if you're trying to light up the inside to get inside visibility of the floor plan of where these items are inside, you would have more sensors. So in this example, in the floor plan editor of the software, you could see this tenant has fixed sensors all over this place, and they multiplex them. If you see, these are in clusters, and that's meant to lower the hardware cost. If each of these was a dedicated reader antenna, yes, they would have much better reads on the inside and more accurate reads on the inside, but their hardware cost would have been 8 times more. So you can imagine what that means. So as it explains here, the pro is you save money. There are cons with this. What is the cons is that if the RFID asset passes under the antenna that is not reading at that moment, because another antenna was reading at that moment, it will miss a read. So that can happen. But that's not to say another antenna won't read it once it goes from this side of the location to the other side. Let's go back to the other picture. So yes, still when it moves from here to here, it will still pick it up. So even as it's moving, if a couple of antennas don't read it at that time, it will read it somewhere else in the facility. So again, it's not that sensitive to know where, if it misses a read on the inside. But on the choke points, we always put dedicated so that we never miss reads when possible on those sensitive spots. And this explains, our readers, Senatron's readers, typically can support up to 2 antennas by default, and with an add-on module, you can have up to 8 antennas connected to a fixed reader. So you can typically, with one cluster is what we call it, it's one reader, 8 antennas, you could cover about 5 to 750 square feet, possibly more depending on the density and the type of installation. That's something that we do when we take on a new project, when we look at, when we do a site survey, pictures, videos, we can evaluate and advise best to our professional experience. And then, this is explaining something else that's really important. Performance-wise, when the RFID cable from the reader is shorter to the antenna, shorter means 5 feet, 6 feet, it gives you the best performance. It gives the maximum power to read and come and get, so 1,000 items, you'll get 95% plus accuracy. If the cables are longer, it loses power. Antenna number 3 would lose power. Thus, it's always important to put the reader in the middle of an installation. So this talks about a little bit about that. It basically shows you what is the wrong way to install an RFID reader within a facility and what is the correct way. So the wrong way would be to have the reader on one end and then have a short cable to the first antenna, longer, and then all the way when you get to the 6th antenna or the 8th antenna, you end up having a 25-foot, 35-foot cable. That's wrong. What you want to do is you want to have the antenna in the middle, central to those, so you can use shorter cables going out from the center outwards. So this even explains, if it's a short cable, it gets maximum power 30 dB. If it's 10 feet, for example, a 10-foot cable, it will lose half a dB, which could mean 1 to 3 feet less read distance range, up to 25 feet cable, which can drop to 28 dB power output and receive, which can lose 7 to 9 foot read distance range. So what does that mean? If you've got a higher ceiling, those longer cables will affect the performance of your installation. So these are things to take into consideration. Yes, you can get dedicated readers and antennas for all of your places, but again, your hardware cost goes up. So have the proper expectations and understand how they should be installed and how it's very important to run the shortest cable from the reader to each antenna. And the other thing to keep in mind is to, the coax cables, the RFID cables from the readers to the antennas, they're very easy, they twist on, they can also be coupled together. Try not to couple them. So if you need to go further, it's better to use a longer one-piece cable that goes 20 feet than to take two 10-foot cables and couple them together, because that coupler right there will also lose some additional power. You'll lose another half a dB. So imagine if you daisy chain couple them, you're going to keep getting weaker and weaker signals, and then your performance will drop. And then this picture here talks about what will happen if you do not fully understand RFID. What happens if you don't look at these videos and you don't listen to all the information that we're giving you guys? You need to understand, again, what is the difference between hands-free versus handheld RFID? Why is it important to tag label size, material versus environment? The answer is the RFID system may not perform per your imagination. Hands-free RFID solutions will not perform per your expectation if an asset. So for example, in this example, let's say you have product in that shelf right now, and that's a metal shelf, and this is a metal shelf. If if these antennas just happen to be dwelling or reading from this one, when somebody takes something from underneath this one and puts it underneath this one, what will happen if the antenna is reading here for a few seconds and they do that quickly and they just happen to bring it from here to here? It will move from there to here and the software won't reflect it, and then you will blame your RFID system and you will say it doesn't work. No, it does work, but you didn't follow our instructions where it said don't use metal shelves or have the proper expectations. If you do have these, don't expect these to be tracked properly. Use a handheld for these, or put the sensors in the shelves. This is what it is. You have to have the right understanding. Or you could have used dedicated readers where all of these antennas are reading all the time, but your cost would have gone up on hardware. So this is why you need to understand what are your options. it's easier to use handheld. We've always mentioned that recommendation is to start with a handheld. Once you've experienced handheld RFID reader and got used to it, you can always expand out and say, okay, you know what, this section of our organization, retail, warehouse, medical, whatever it is, can benefit from a fixed RFID reader at the choke points, or yeah, I want it all over the ceilings. So take that into consideration. Again, this talks about why do professionals do what they do. They go out and do site surveys and teach you and explain to you what works, what doesn't work, and if you do want to do hands-free, what things you need to do to make your environment RFID friendly. And this is quite a bit of information. The conclusions on this document are pretty much what we talked about again. It's talking about handheld RFID should be, typically what we recommend first. And then a hybrid is the next step, having fixed readers at choke points, having fixed readers at your checkout points, such as POS stations, where you sell things are with an RFID scanner, and that goes into your ERP or POS scanner, and it removes it from the inventory, and it keeps the RFID inventory in sync, because the RFID inventory is independent from your ERP and POS system, but you can keep them in sync. And that's in another video that talks about how to use RFID. Do you want to use RFID simply for doing super fast cycle counts in 1 hour, or do you want other benefits and other automations out of it? So definitely look at the other video that talks about how to use an RFID system, and what are the options of how you use the handheld, hybrid, 100% RFID sensors, again with hybrid handheld, so that you understand what are the benefits and what is best for your organization. Thank you.